Derek Wheatley, and welcome to episode 201 of the Wheatley podcast. Thank you very much for joining us wherever you are doing so. A big thanks to Joanna Dwyer for coming on last week to celebrate our 200th episode, where she, it wasn't really an interview as such. We had a good chat about a lot of things about the podcast, obviously, but with art and music and all that, and things that I enjoy and but Joanne enjoys. And it was good fun. And to have Joanne in the room as well, we were just talking about that with my next guest. I don't want to spoil it for any listeners who can't see him, but so if I was talking about the idea of having people in the room, it's nice, but sometimes the Zoom thing, the sound is better. But thanks very much, Joanne. Go back and listen to it if you haven't done so. Support us on Buy Me a Coffee if you like. Link in description. But let's get into this week's episode. A man who's no stranger to the podcast. He was on, I checked, episode 24 a long time ago. He's a pain and movement specialist and the author of Pain and the Survival Brain. Kieran McNally. How are you doing, Kieran?
Well, Derek, I'm not too bad now at all.
Welcome back. I want to show you something, right? Some people will obviously only see this on YouTube. So this is two young men in their prime, I would say. Back in we were just thinking that 3 years ago. Somewhere in between the first restrictions and maybe the third restriction, I don't really know. But yeah, it's a while, and you came over to the house that time, and we had a chat about what you do. We don't need to talk about what we always ask the question about the history of your childhood. If you're really interested in Kieran's childhood, go back and listen to episode 24. You freak.
It's not that exciting.
Yeah, well, look, leave that up to the listener. All right, but for the people who don't know and who haven't listened to it, what is a pain and movement specialist, Kieran?
I'll just have to say there, actually, I think I need some new clothes because I had the same hoodie up with me today that I was wearing 3 years ago in that picture. Oh my God.
Quality clothes, though.
Yeah, good quality clothes. So pain and movement specialist, it's more of an approach than a qualification as such. So it's more like how I see a client when they come in. So if somebody comes in and sees me, I would more take a representation of exactly what is going on in their life. Because generally, that people come into me wouldn't be so much of somebody with an ankle sprain. It would be somebody that would have a repetitive ankle sprain, or somebody that would have recurring back pain, or something that keeps coming back. So generally, I would need to take a deeper understanding of why the pain is there. So not so much interested in the actual pain itself. It's more what purpose is the pain trying to serve. So it's trying to dissect why the pain is there. And then ultimately, then the end goal is always to try and get that person moving better again, feeling safe in themselves, building resilience, and ultimately just be more confident within themselves. So that's where kind of the name pain and movement specialist came out of.
I've been in with you a couple of times. We were talking about this the other day, and I can't remember, it was my neck or my shoulder, but the second one was the knee, which was a bit more of a problem. It was a meniscus. You reckon it was a meniscus tear, slight tear. And what you kind of taught me with regards to pain and the way I was seeing it was, first of all, let's just stop everything. I have a pain in my knee. I can't do anything anymore. I can't do anything on this until this feels better. So obviously I went to you and we talked about it, and you put in my head the idea of the body sometimes sending out kind of warning signals from the area that's sore. I might think, oh, my knee's gone again, but the body is saying, this is just a warning. Whatever you're doing, don't do it. And we built from there. You gave me different exercises to do. And that was obviously great, but there's a certain amount of confidence I think you can put in a person with regard to injury, that it's not going to be the end of the world. It's not, this pain isn't going to be there for the rest of your life, hopefully. And I think that's what I got from the knee. With people who have come back to you and talked to you about that, is it partly, or is it largely a psychological thing?
Well, like, not necessarily, no. So like pain is just communication. So to say it was a cycle, like your psychology obviously is involved in everything,
Yeah.
but like in your case, you had an actual physical injury.
Yeah.
Okay. So the communication or the nerves in that area would be sending that information up to the brain to say that there's tissue damage here, and it's just informing the brain of what's going on. But the brain then will interpret that information, but it also takes into consideration other things as well. So it taking considerations, have you injured your knee before? Um, it would if there's any past experiences through that knee, that would be stored for future reference, like any fears, worries, anxieties towards pain in general, your understanding, your beliefs, and the brain then will make a decision based on all of this information. Should is it worth creating pain, or is it worth giving you the pain experience? Because the idea behind it is it's trying to protect you. And if you didn't feel pain and you were injured, again, you have to think, well, it's a survival mechanism.
Hmm.
So if you were injured 50,000 years ago or 100,000 years ago and you didn't know you were injured, well, then you're going to be like, if your body didn't produce that pain, well, then you're more likely to be eaten by a predator.
Yeah.
So it's this, so your brain has to kind of create this discomfort to get your attention, to tell you to either take a rest or to do something, look after your knee. Because if you don't, if you continue working on this, well, then you're more likely, to be food for a predator.
Yeah. That's
So,
fair enough. I still think that's in today's world, it's the same thing.
this is the thing. So it's a survival mechanism, but in a world where there's less threats.
Yeah.
So the physical threats aren't as prominent as they would have been, back through most of our evolution, but it's still the same process. And that's why, well, that's one major reason to why I suppose people are suffering with chronic pain is because of the the threats we perceive in our modern world, like
Mm.
mortgage payments and work related things, that we're constantly in this state of perceived danger, perceived threat. And pain is a protective mechanism. And it's one reason to why our bodies produce pain or we've experienced pain is because, we're perceiving danger all
Mm.
the time that there may not actually be that danger there.
What possessed you to write a book?
Well, it was during COVID. So
Mm.
um I had to close the business for a few months, and after the first or second day I was at home, and I was kind of going out of my mind, the way we're
Yeah.
all locked up in the house. So I had to do something with my time. And I always had an idea in my head that I would maybe consider writing it in a few years' time. But I just started writing, and all of a sudden then I had a thousand words written. And yeah, so once I had a thousand words written, I was just like, I'm gonna make a go at this. So I discussed it with my partner, and she says, well, why don't you just, allocate a couple, pretend you're going to work and just go upstairs and just allocate a few hours every day, pretend that's your work, and just, start writing. So I signed up for a course online. I won't tell you how much it was, but when you think about it now, really for what you got for the course, it was
You got a
a
book out of
bit.
it.
I got a book. Yeah, well, I didn't really,
Okay,
not
fair.
through that.
Yeah.
But it was like write a book in 3 months.
Okay.
So yeah, so it just basically kind of teaches you, how to, I suppose, get things on paper,
Mm.
and how to structure it and then market it and all that type of stuff. And by the end of 3 months, you'll have this book. Well, that would definitely wasn't the case with me. The more I went into it, then the more in depth I started to go into it. The more I wasn't happy with it, and the more I started to learn a lot of new things. And I was just like, wow, I actually really, really enjoying this process, because it was actually better than any course I was actually I had taken in the past, because I was actually learning so much
Mhm.
in areas that you wouldn't do a course on. Like, there wouldn't be courses on personality out there. There
Yeah.
wouldn't be courses on genetics. Not that I was studying genetics in depthly or anything like that, but I was at least trying to learn how it contributes to pain. Um, and the more I kept writing, I was just, I couldn't really stop, and I just wanted the quality of it, um, to be, something that was different than anything that I had read. Um, and then I went back to work after 3 or 4 months, and from there it was just like, right, I'm going to continue this into a habit. And at 5:30 every morning, I was getting up for 2 hours, drinking my cup of coffee, and 2 hours peace and quiet before the kids got up.
Mm.
And I just kept up that routine. And 4 years later, well, almost 4 years, um, I finally have a book that I'm very proud of.
The When you're writing a book like this, it's so obviously important with the what you say, because you have to look into research and you have to make sure that all the stuff that you say is right and it has some sort of a background. Because there's a danger with those things. It's not like a novel where the imagination can run riot. There's a danger that you could say something and write something that's incorrect, and all of a sudden everything kind of falls down, because what people are like. They're mad for something, you to
Mm,
do something wrong so they can kind of jump on you. um they're out there in the bushes waiting for me to mess up as well, so that's all
mm.
right. It's all part of it, but that's a huge part of it as well. When you say it took you 4 years, obviously other stuff you going on in your life too. There's huge amount of research I would imagine you had to go through.
Yeah, it was endless. But as I said, I didn't mind doing it, but you will always get people out there that are mad to call you out on something, or if you just make the slightest, like, it's especially in my world, if you put up a video and even if you say the one wrong word, they'll hop on you.
Yeah.
So it is hard like that. And you do want to make sure that everything is right. But I suppose if you're getting information from credible sources, but also you have to stay up to date, because
Mm.
science moves so quickly that information that was out there 10 years ago, if you're looking at that information today, like, some of it can be even outdated. Even the words we use around everything that I understand in regards to pain,
Mhm.
that the brain produces pain. There's even debate around that now. And that's something that like, especially over the last 5 years, that I've really bought into. And now it's starting to challenge my own beliefs that, the brain maybe doesn't even produce pain, that we experience pain. So I really, I'm starting to look into this, because before it was, pain is a sensation, then it's a perception, and the brain produces pain when, it perceives danger. And now it's like, it doesn't produce it, we experience it. So science is moving very, very quickly, and it's hard to stay on top of it. But those those people that will hop on you like that, they're looking to hop on anybody,
Yeah.
and that's what you have to to uh to take, because you're going to get criticism from everybody, no matter if it's 100% correct. There'll always be people with their biases, and there'll always be people looking to get offended. So you just have to do your best to make sure, certainly in my case, is who is this book for?
Yeah.
The book is for isn't for the academic. It's for your everyday person that doesn't care about if you write the wrong word. They care about, okay, can I help them? Is this book going to be helpful for me? And I think I have produced something that is going to be helpful for a lot of people.
I read it, thankfully, thanks to you for letting me read it in the first place. But I uh, it expanded on what you told me, obviously. So it goes, we've only so much time we had together when you were starting out my knee and stuff. But the ideas are obviously around pain, but there was a certain number of stories about people, like, who say somebody who has a chronic back problem, and I'm sure lots of people could say they have a chronic back problem. It seems to be pretty, prevalent. But um, the idea that they may not have to go through all this pain, because this is a mental health podcast, and I know that pain can cause serious mental health problems for people. The idea that you're stuck for life with this ailment is a pretty horrible thing. And how you kind of address those issues, and you can go into depth about all the things that causes pain and that, but breaking down, do you think it's important to break down certain individual cases for people? Because people can obviously relate to that a little bit more, I think.
So you're asking for me to give an example now, is
Well,
it?
no,
Or
just do you like, do you think it's important to give those examples in your book? Is that something that would,
oh, definitely.
yeah,
Like, like if you're just giving the kind of science behind it without
mm,
giving it examples, you need to be able to put the information into context, so somebody can just make it relatable,
yeah,
So that's what I have tried to do throughout the book, is just to give real life, realistic examples, but also try to break down their situations and make it logical.
yeah,
Because a lot of people, when they're suffering from pain, they don't understand it. They don't know why they're in pain. They think that their bodies are breaking on them, and that their bodies are, wearing away in them, and they don't understand the meaning behind the pain experience. So I just try to give, like, through education and examples and stories, I try to give logic to why people experience pain.
yeah,
And I really just really have a big, and that's why I came up with the name pain and the survival brain, because
yeah,
it's a survival mechanism. And it's not that their bodies are actually breaking down on them. It's that, believe it or not, their brain and bodies are actually working for them. It's trying to protect them, but in some cases, it's just being overprotective.
yeah,
And again, we live in a world now where it's constant stress, whereas, like, again, 50,000 years ago, the stressors that you would have is, right, I'm going to have to hunt a mammoth. And when you catch a mammoth, you're sitting down, you're eating your dinner. So you're
mm,
going into your stress response, you catch your dinner, you sit beside the fire, you rest and digest. But now we're getting up in the morning, we're rushing to get out for school, you're, going to work, you have deadlines to meet, you're getting home, you think about mortgage payments. As soon as you finish your mortgage payment, you're thinking about the next one, you have to pay this, you have to pay that. It's just constant stress. And you're just in this rat race all the time. And your body's just producing these stress hormones all the time. And again, that's, anxiety and fear. These are communication methods as well. And a lot of time when people experience these other feelings, like anxiety and depression, or not depression, but anxiety and fear and pain, they're just communication methods,
mm.
And so really in those cases, you just have to dissect, strip that back and say, well, okay, what's the message here? Why is your body producing these experiences?
I am. As you know, I work in a gym. The boss is a bit of a nightmare, but like everybody else is sound. But you know that thing of people who go to the gym a lot regularly, little niggles here and there. It's just like one of those things where you pick up, especially something like if it's jujitsu or kickboxing, those kind of things. They come up all the time. So I was saying to them, obviously, since I read your book, about, like, I think honestly, people who have these kind of things should definitely read your book, because I think it takes away a lot of that idea of I've seen people drop out of a sport that they love because of an injury that they reckon it'll never get better. And obviously with the people there, they've not dropped out. They're still going in, but they have all these kind of niggles and worries about, is this going to get worse? Like, or is it going to get better? That's probably the bigger question. And I think this book explains the idea of, that you can live with this thing and you can improve and kind of strive from it and move away from it. And I think it's so important. And like I said, with regards to my own mental health, if I get knocked out of a rhythm for a few weeks, like I did with my knee that time, it affects me a lot, like, because um these are kind of training and exercises are kind of a lifeline for me, particularly with depression and things, because you can sink into these problems so easily, and you can, you can see how people do get dragged on to these things. So it is important to kind of, for me, to give your like book a shout out, to kind of say like that there are, ways around it. Um, there's there's a number of things in it where I obviously had to Google because, I don't know. I don't know. Some words I don't know. It might surprise some people. But what is the, because this came up a few times, right? What is the biopsychosocial model? That's probably a
Yeah,
big
so
question, is it?
it is, I suppose. But
Yeah.
really, I suppose if you wanted to break it down into one word, it's
Yeah.
it's life. It's life.
Right. Okay.
Like it's basically your life.
Yeah.
But it's like all of these areas from the biopsychosocial model can influence pain.
Hmm.
So the bio is your biology. So it's the physical aspect, all right? So it's like anything from your like tissue health to the sensitivity of the nerves to inflammation to genetics and how basically how your whole physiology works. And most of the time, this is how people treat pain. They just work off the biomedical aspect or the biology aspect of it. Now, this works true for a lot of cases, like for general soft tissue injuries, like an ankle sprain or a hamstring tear, or even if you injure your back, it's really it's a okay approach for dealing with acute injuries. But it can still be limited in dealing with certain acute injuries because you're a prime example, Derek, because you had a physical injury in your knee,
Hmm.
but your psychology was greatly influencing that.
Hmm.
Okay, your knee was injured, but you were afraid, you
Hmm.
were worried, you were like, I don't trust it, you know? So that's where the psychological aspect of this influences the biological aspect. So remember, I said the nerves in around your knee, after you get injured, that will send that information up to the brain. But then there's like an amplifier in the brain, let's say. And that's where your beliefs, like if you believe, oh my, I'm after, injuring my knee here and I can't exercise, or I'm going to cause more damage to it, or, I don't want to get arthritis. That's going to actually, that by having that sort of thought process, that's going to increase the likelihood that you'll feel pain
Hmm.
because remember you're amplifying the danger. All right. And again, pain is a protective mechanism. So it's really important for me to work off a biopsychosocial model is because if I just purely look at the knee and just treat the knee and give you exercises without really understanding how you're thinking around this, well, then you could be doing knee strengthening exercise that might be beneficial,
Hmm.
but you might not feel safe doing it because you may have this negative belief that I have arthritis, or I could have arthritis, or I don't want to damage this further, or this is painful. I must be making it worse. So it's really important for me to kind of really ask the right questions to see if you are having those negative thoughts around that. So that's kind of like the psychology aspect of it. So you'd be your emotions, your fear, anxiety, your behaviors, mental health, mood, all of that will influence the physical aspect of it. And then the social aspect of it, which is it's very under researched. Um, and it was throughout the book, it was challenging to really get um a lot of research in this area, whereas the biological aspect, the psychological aspect is, there's so much information out there. The social aspect of it, there wasn't as much information out there. But the social aspect of it is your environment. So
Hmm.
work, how is work playing a part in it, in your pain? Are you, stressed out in work? Do you have a boss that bullies you?
Yeah.
You work long hours. What sort of physical activity do you do in work? Your family, same situation. How is your relationships at home? Um, then there would be, your just the general relationships with your friends, your hobbies, um, and how you see yourself in the world. How does the world see you?
Hmm.
So all of these areas they influence pain in their own right, and there's a lot of crossover between the three areas. But ultimately, if you just focus on one area, you're missing a big part of the picture by not taking into consideration the other aspects of the biopsychosocial model.
Like, why weren't we taught this, earlier? Because it our well, I shouldn't say our, but my outlook on it was always just um I have a pain, I have an injury, I can't do anything. I just have to sit down and just wait till it passes. Because and I don't think that's a novel like approach. I don't think I was the only one thinking that. I think this is what we
Mm.
were taught when we were growing up. And like, what do you like? Where do you want this book to go? Who do you want this? Who do you want to kind of read this book?
Well, it's primarily for people that are suffering for persistent pain or pain that keeps coming back, or people that are in pain for more than 3 months. This is, I suppose, where who the book is geared for. But I'm not just saying it because I wrote. I really think that anybody, it would benefit anybody,
Yeah,
and especially if you have somebody that's close to you that's in pain.
yeah,
It's beneficial for you because I often talk about this in the book. It's like for people that are in long-term pain, it's beneficial for them to build a community around them that, can understands where they are, so they can
yeah.
empathize with them. So not you don't want sympathy off them. You want
No,
them to empathize. You want them to understand where you are, and to have like your work environment or your family to understand that, because like people that are suffering with persistent pain, it's invisible.
yeah,
If you break your leg, everybody's going to send you flowers. You'll be like, oh, get well soon, all of that. People that are suffering with chronic pain or persistent pain, they're in pain all the time. There's no real visible injury. And this can kind of fuel people, stigma and
mm,
validation, things like this. And people might think you're lazy in work or that you're trying to get out responsibilities, and this can build resentment between the pain sufferer, bitterness, and they can feel hurt by it all and upset, and they can socially isolate. They can exclude themselves from things, and all because it's not because these people are, vindictively going out to try and invalidate them.
mm,
It's just because they don't understand.
yeah,
And it's really important for the pain sufferer you know, to really help people understand, because, they're not going to be able to unless, you kind of educate them in that area as well. So really that's who it's based for. But I do think that, like, if you understand pain a bit more yourself, even if you're
mm,
not in pain at the minute, it can empower you.
yeah,
You can make better decisions for yourself. Like, I play sport myself. It's probably not a good thing that I have such a good understanding of pain, because sometimes I don't address the pain,
okay,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah,
because I know it's sore, but I know I'm all right. I'm going to be
mm,
grand. Whereas sometimes it's good maybe to be a little bit oblivious to why the actual pain is there, because
yeah,
you'll actually drop what you're doing and you'll address the actual problem, but
yeah,
but I think that everybody that, and even if you're not in pain long term, I think that it would be beneficial for you to read this book. And you ask the question, like, why don't we know this? It's because I don't think, like, generally it's not taught in
yeah,
schools, and even in universities, they don't really go into too much depth in kind of pain science. It's very much dealt with from the biomedical aspect.
yeah. And that's kind of interesting as well, because we do immediately opt for painkillers. I mean, that's clues in the title, I suppose. But the idea of, anti-inflammatories and stuff for certain injuries, and yours is obviously, it's in the subtitle, the more holistic approach. But there's
Mm.
still a room for, you say in the book, there's still room for medication if needed.
Oh, definitely. I'm not
Yeah,
anti-medication. I
yeah,
would be like in certain cases, like with certain people that they'll need they'll need their medication to be
mm,
functional, and that's obviously between them and their doctor. And then I wouldn't come between that. I just think in general they're probably overprescribed,
yeah,
and where we don't really need them, to be the sole treatment. You know, I'm happy for people that would, for most people that are in pain, that if you were to take medication, it's part of a strategy to help desensitize something to get you more functional.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, people opt to your old strategy, which would have been to take the medication and just rest, you know, and just
Yeah.
do nothing and wait for the pain to resolve the problem, you know. But pain, the really pain, their communication, what would be the word? So there'd be suppressors, let's say.
Yeah.
So there'd be communication suppressors as opposed to painkillers, in my opinion. Because remember, pain is just communication. Your body is only producing that pain because it's trying to motivate certain behaviors.
Yeah.
So if you sprain your ankle, you feel this pain, so you know, okay, to rest, to do something about it. You know, but if you're taking pain medication to suppress this communication all the time, well then, you know, how helpful is that? It's like, let's say you're hungry and you took medication to suppress that communication.
Mm.
You know, you'd be sent to for psychiatric evaluation,
Yeah.
you
Sure. Yeah.
know, and no different than sleep, you know, and no different than thirst. These are all communication methods, and pain is a communication method. And we're so quick to try and get rid of that communication than rather than ask the question, okay, well, what could be going on in my life here that is causing this communication? Why am I experiencing this pain right now?
I had that thing, competition. I won't mention its name. It doesn't deserve it. But no, I had the competition there a while back, and after the competition, I had a little bit of inflammation in the knee. It's the same one that you helped treat, and that was as I started to read the book, and I knew what you had told me before, but obviously you went into a lot more depth in the book about it. So I took a couple of anti-inflammatories that morning. That I got up and it was kind of hopping, felt like that, and I had that creeping kind of suspicion that like, oh no, for a couple of seconds I thought that's gone
Hmm.
again, like it's one of those things. I took the couple of anti-inflammatories, and then I did. You showed me like a couple of movements to get more confidence and stuff, and I started doing that in the afternoon, and then the next morning it was fine. Like, and I thought,
Hmm.
I was already starting to go down the route of like, oh, this could be a couple of weeks now that I won't be able to run or I
Hmm.
won't be able to do. But it's funny, like you mentioned about being armed with the knowledge of it, how empowering it is, and I can definitely draw comparisons with something like panic attacks and having the tools like,
Hmm.
deep breathing and, you know, kind of mindfulness, something that can be quite mindful that you can do while you're going through it, that can take you away from that and give you that knowledge. And I think that's why, and I know you said it and I've said it already, but I think that's why everybody should read this, because we've been fed kind of on the idea of it's, just medication or it's just lying around and not getting it. And I think that's really important to note
Hmm.
that there is, though, like I'll still get those moments, no doubt, that I'll be like, oh no, it's gone, or it's something's bad's after
Hmm.
happening again. But I know I'm like armed with this now. I know that like this is just the brain, just that idea, and I think that's huge. There's another thing that you talk about in the book, and I think a lot of people will know what stress is, and they'll have felt what stress is. But what can like everyday stress do to the body?
Yeah, well, like, I mean, well, first of all, stress is an important physiological process.
Hmm.
Like we need stress. If you didn't have stress, you wouldn't get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah,
You know, stress gives us, you know, motivation to do things. You know, like I spoke before about, you know, having to catch your dinner
yeah,
100,000 years ago. That's what stress gives you, that kind of, you know, encouragement or that motivation to go and do that. And then, you know, once your body goes into a stress response, that's it, and you activate your fight or flight response,
yeah,
that gives you that energy to go and do that. And then once, you know, you achieve whatever it is, then you go into your rest and digest. But the problem is now is that, you know, our kind of stress response is always turned on. And if that stress response is always turned on, well, then it's sapping energy from you. You know, even if you're lying in bed and you're thinking about, what somebody told you in work, or somebody said something to you in work, or did they call me an asshole, or well, what did she mean or he mean by that? Or, how am I going to pay the bills? Or, I have to get this and that done for the kids. Even if you're lying in bed and you're worrying and thinking about that, you may as well be out having a run. Your body's
Yeah.
producing the exact same hormones and neurotransmitters as if you are going for a run. And that's taxing. That expends a lot of energy, and that's fine if that's a once off. But if this happens repetitively and it compounds over time, that's where disease develops.
Mm.
This is where you get chronic illness. This is where you get autoimmune diseases. This is where you get injuries, because your body doesn't get a chance to replenish. You recover when you're in your rest and digest phase. But if you're constantly on the go and the brain is just you're doing 100 things at one time, that means that stress response is just turn on all the time, and you've only so much resources. And I use an analogy of a glass of water in the book, that everybody has a glass of water. And within this glass of water, you have stones. And a stone could represent like a grain of sand, it can be like a pebble or a big stone. And each one of them represents a stressor in your life. So you could have, a large stone could be, a physical injury, or it can be, a death of a family member, or, deadlines in work. But the amount of stressors that you have in your life, and poor sleep is a big one as well.
Yeah.
And the amount of stressors that you would have in your life will obviously be more stones in your glass, which
Yeah.
will end up rising the water level in the glass. And over time, if you have enough stones in your glass, then your water level is going to overflow. And what can happen with people with pain is that they could have a lot of things going on in their life, and their water level could be at the brim because they have a lot of stones in their glass. And then all it takes is something like they bend over to pick up a pen off the ground,
Yeah.
and then that final grain of sand is enough to overflow the glass. And that's when they injure themselves. And then they say to everybody, oh, I bent over to pick up a pen, I'm after throwing out my back. And they only focus on what happened in the moment, what happened
Yeah.
now. They don't focus on, well, I've gone through relationship problems. I actually missed a mortgage payment. Haven't been looking after myself as well as I have been. I'm not as physically fit. I haven't been eating as well. I haven't been sleeping as well. They only focus on bending over and picking up the pen,
Yeah.
and they say to themselves, and, I must be really, weak, or my body must be
Mhm.
really, it's not resilient because all I have to do is bend over and pick up a pen and I get injured. There's studies done on NFL players in college, and that they studied them during their preseason when they're in their boot camp, and they were
Mhm.
training 3 times a day over there during the boot camp. And then they studied them when they were during their college exams, and they were training once a day during their college exams. And they found that they were twice as likely to get injured during their college exams
Mhm.
versus when they were training 3 times a day. So that just goes to show you how much stress and constant stress, affects pain and injuries
Yeah.
within the body.
I know someone who hurt their back drinking a cup of coffee.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. You know them
I'm
as well.
sure.
You
I'm
know
sure
them.
it was. I'm sure it wasn't the cup of coffee.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, do I know? I probably can guess who it was.
Yeah, we won't. I won't say his name again. That's all.
Yeah.
But that, yeah, like that is funny because the idea that a lot of people seem to do the injuries in the most innocuous moments or situations, and they'll be rolling around for an hour in jujitsu, trying to kill each other, and then they'll, like you said, maybe bend down to pick up like a runner, and their back goes, and it's
Mm.
obviously more than like people aren't drawing stress into it and all the other stuff outside of just physicality. Speaking of stress, was it a stressful was it a stressful thing to write a book? I know you've mentioned a bit about it before, or is the after parts more stressful than the actual writing?
The writing, no, it was just
Mm.
time. Time was an
Yeah.
issue for me. It was just trying to juggle it all. And I did try to let it not affect family life too much. That's why I got up at 5:30, but I actually really enjoyed getting up at 5:30.
Yeah.
Like I really, really was, you know, very peaceful. And just to sit there, and I was so productive at that time. And if I tried to do it in the evening time, I wasn't as productive. I
Yeah.
just found I was just on point for those couple hours in the morning time. Um, so time was I suppose, the biggest challenge of it all. I really enjoyed the whole process of it. Once I got it finished, I sent it off to the editors. I got it back. I think that from there, then it's been a bit more stressful
Yeah.
because it's more annoying because you don't understand what you're supposed to be doing. You're trying to get help from people online, and and it's not just even like getting books formatted and getting it
Mm.
the fonts right, and it does. There's certain printers that don't work with certain fonts, and you're like, oh, it's those things that you wouldn't
Yeah.
even think about. That's more annoying than anything. But the actual process of writing the book, it was, no, I actually really enjoyed it.
It's so funny that though, because if I think if someone sat down, if you ask someone to write a book on their subject, whatever it might be,
Mm.
and I think people, the immediate thing, they probably wouldn't think of the aftermath of what needs to
Mm.
be done afterwards. So they're straight in, they're thinking, right, I need to write a book. But then the idea of, oh, how many words does it have to be? And then, by extension, how many pages does it have to be? Is it going to be hardback? And it's always like I think I've talked about this loads of times, but is there a sense of imposter syndrome with you sometimes? Do you ever get that? Because I get it quite a lot, of an idea of now you're not just a pain and movement specialist, you're an author.
Yeah. I think you get imposter syndrome all the time. I think everybody gets it. I just honestly I can't see a scenario where somebody doesn't get it when they're trying to achieve something that and you finally achieve it.
Yeah,
You'll definitely, I just can't see how you wouldn't feel that way because you almost feel like, right, now people will perceive me as an expert in this field. And, you're like, uh-oh, people are going to start asking me questions here and
yeah.
will I get found out? You just, I don't think, maybe I'm wrong with this, but I don't think that I think that anybody that achieves something, um, well, certainly for me, like a book was a big achievement for me.
Oh yeah,
I just think that you know, there'll always be that element in the background. But I just, well,
yeah. It's like I, I don't know if I get it as much on here anymore. I used to get it quite a bit on here, and I was always thinking like, who am I interviewing this person? That was always into the back of my mind. And then it kind of switched roles, and it became a thing when I became a coach. And then I was like, who am I teaching to teach these people?
mm,
And we've had people on, and you are right, like, because I always ask people who have maybe, outside of their line of work, they've done something else, like you've written the book, or somebody's like released an album or whatever, made a film. And the answer seems to be the same. Like
mm,
there seems to be the idea that we are, if we strive to do something and we get there, we're always thinking like, this isn't me, or this feels strange or weird. And it's probably going to be even, well, I shouldn't add this pressure into your life, but it's probably going to be weirder now when it comes out, and then you have to, you know start talking to people who haven't read it, and all of a sudden they have read it, and then they're going to give you their opinion on it.
but definitely. But like even on that, like it doesn't matter who you are. Like somebody that I follow online, and he has a couple of 100,000 followers, and he's published scientific papers, multiple ones, and he's been in the business 25 years. He has his own podcast. He's doing it from every angle, and he spoke about this, that he even gets it all the
Yeah.
time. He runs courses. So I just think it's something, I'm not sure what the advantage is of having imposter syndrome. I'm sure a psychologist would have a reason to why we get imposter syndrome, why we have the ability of having it.
Does it
I'm
keep
sure there's
the
a reason for that.
does it keep the ego in check a little bit?
Maybe, yeah, yeah, definitely could do that. But what's the advantage of keeping an
Yeah.
ego in check as well?
Well,
Like maybe,
have you met the person that, like, we don't know. Now, I can't say, have you met the person that doesn't have imposter syndrome? Because we don't know unless we've actually asked them and they've been honest about it. But you've definitely met the person who's like an egomaniac, and
Yeah.
it would seem that they don't have it. And I think the danger
Mm.
of not having your ego in check, you turn into an arsehole. Like there's the
Possibly, and then you could be socially excluded from your
mm,
tribe. I suppose that if we're going back to the primal time. But also now that it came to me there that it could be a case of that if your ego is too high, maybe you might feel you don't need to improve. And
yeah.
if you don't need to improve, well then, you know, maybe that you're not, you know, if you can't improve, well then you're not going to get the advantages of improvement, if that
Yeah, and
makes
like
sense.
yeah, it's like what's the point? What's the point in life if you can't improve on what you have? I guess because we're all
Mm.
trying to do that in our own small way, in whatever field we're in or whatever our hobby is or that. So, but I do think it's an amazing achievement to have written and completed a book. I think some people have written books and thrown them in their attic and they've
Mm.
stayed there, and that is the easy way out. Yeah, at the end, because then nobody can criticize you. It's grand. You just
Yeah.
say, "Oh, I wrote a novel," and then I'm not talking about anyone in particular here, by the way. But I have a few copies in there. But it is that it is a big thing to have finished a book. And do you know yet when it's out where people can get it and all that stuff?
So just before I talk about that,
Yeah.
there, but I made myself accountable to people. I
Okay.
told people I was going to do it. And I done that for a couple of reasons. One was just so I actually kept going,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
didn't give up.
Yeah.
But also, so I did publish it. And so
Yeah.
I had often clients come in to me saying, how's the book going? Or, people like yourself or even Martin, or, you know, if I hadn't told them, maybe if nobody was questioning me, oh, when is it out? Well, then, I could have gave up. And I think that that's what a portion of towards the end of the book that I talk about when you are trying to, set goals for yourself. Tell tell some people that
Yeah.
you're working to achieve these goals. So you're not just accountable to yourself, that you're accountable to somebody else. You know, so you're less likely to, or you're more likely to achieve the goals as a
Yeah.
result of that. But when is the book out? I'm waiting for the author or the proof copy at the minute. That's supposed to arrive on the 11th of December.
Okay.
I was hoping to have it out for Christmas. It's just a bit disappointing. It's kind of taken so long. Like it set me back a few days, trying to get the book cover designed.
Yeah.
Um, the colors and fonts and all that. I had to get those right. So I was hoping to have a launch on the 14th of December in the book club or the book store behind Burgess in Athlone.
Yeah.
Um, and that was supposed to be due for the 14th, but I'm not sure it's going to make that now because I'm only getting the proof copy on the 11th. And
Okay.
then I have to proofread it, make sure everything's okay. And then once that's all good, then we can order the book.
Okay. Like,
So,
yeah, I guess I can mark that day off the diary. So it's a shame.
yeah, yeah.
But I know, but look, I know because I've spoken to you about it, and there is all these little things to kind of get done. And you were
Yeah,
mentioning you had certain deadlines, and I understand that that's a disappointment. But the fact that it's on the way is the big thing
yeah.
that's going to be done, and that is a really good point that you made there about telling people about something because I said I did this with the podcast. I was like, I'm going to start a podcast, and then I started telling everybody, and then yeah, like I do agree. It's partly about the idea of it does hold you like accountable for what you're going to do then, and see if people can kind of go, well, I thought you were going to do this, but it is also a bit of reverse psychology on yourself to kind of the idea that like well, I can't go back at it now. Like I've already told these people, like
Hmm.
I can't let them down. Not that you're letting them down at all, but in your head you start making up
Yeah.
these things. And look, if that thing, where as long as it's not that negative thing where it puts so much pressure on you, um, that it goes the opposite direction. But I get that. I think it's really good to be able to do that. Like, so do you still get up at 5:30 in the morning?
No, no, I'm back to my normal routine. They've been Arlene's coming in trying to tell me to get up at like 8:05. It's like, get up out of bed, will you?
But do you not
So,
miss it? But you just said there, because like I said this before. I get up 5:45 every morning, and you mentioned peace there. There's a
mm,
stillness to the time, even
yeah,
if I only live with one or two people, and they're not children, So there's something in that kind of time where I can do my own thing, even if it's not constructive, like writing out the next podcast, even if it's just watching a film or something like that.
mm,
Um, Getting something done before the day starts, going for a run, all those kind of things.
yeah.
But that's all right for you. That's all. I should say that's all right for me. You've got like you work in the evenings, and you've got the two kids and all that as well, and I can understand it. Um, do you ever foresee a time where you might write a follow up or another type of book?
Well, while I was halfway through it, um, I was like, right, I really want to write a similar book, but in the context of sport.
Okay.
So, because I get a lot of athletes in here that would have recurring injuries, hamstring injuries that keep coming back, and shoulder issues that every so often that it flares up in them, or they're only playing at 70%, because of avoidance and fear and things like that. So I was like, I'd really like to, do a kind of a biopsychosocial approach to sports rehabilitation. Um, but God, this took so much energy out of me, and I just couldn't think about starting this like at the first word or the first
Yeah.
page again and going through all that, because it was such a, for me, some people probably could have written this in a year or maybe even 6 months, but for me, it took a lot of energy, a lot of time. Um, so to go through that whole process again, I'm not sure.
No, that's fair enough. It's a lot. Like, there's also something I wanted to ask you about as well, because you told me about this. I think it was the first time I went into it, maybe first or second time, and the idea of people going to you, big lads, think they have to be screaming
Mm.
down the place as you're, giving their hamstring a rub or something like that, that there has to be pain involved in helping pain. And I wanted to bring it up again because I think it's very important. I was getting a massage with Donna, Donna as well, but
Mm.
we were chatting the other day about that, like, and I was getting a nice massage, but nothing too new, nothing too painful or anything like that. So it was good. But there isn't this belief that we need to go through pain to get over pain, and it's you basically said to me that's obviously not true.
Well, it's definitely not true. Like, there's no evidence to support that.
Mm,
Like, it's like I'd be often be in dressing rooms, and people whoever would be giving rubs before games would be getting their elbows in and trying to loosen things up, and they would say, oh, I'm breaking up adhesions and things like that. There's no evidence to back any of this up. And even when it comes to treatments, there is that idea that I need to be hurt. I really need to feel a lot of discomfort to get the benefit. But as time goes on, we actually know now that we need to do less on the bed,
yeah.
and it's actually less time spent on a bed and more of a kind of take up a coaching role. So it's more like really starting to understand, like, obviously if you injure a hamstring, it might be beneficial to do a few minutes on the bed. But for me, it would be, okay, how do I get him prepared or her prepared for that environment that she
Hmm.
wants to go back into? And that could be, first of all, working on some gentle movement, but also building up their confidence. Um, and certainly then going back to how they got injured. So again, if we're talking about a hamstring injury, it's like, let's say if it was when they were sprinting.
Mm,
Well, you cannot fully rehab somebody by just getting your elbow into their hamstring, because that doesn't prepare them for that environment that they're going to go back into.
yeah.
So the rehabilitation should be based around, how do I get that tissue, but also that person prepared for that environment that they were in, that and how they got injured. So how do we get them ready for that? And it just can't be done on the bed. It
Yeah.
has to be real life reenactment of what caused the injury and what environment they're going back into.
I kind of tacked that on the end, but just thought of it and I wanted that in because I think it's something that people have a a misconception about. Where can people find you, Kieran?
Well, you could get me on Instagram, so it's Paint Specialist Kieran. It's the same on TikTok.
TikTok?
And oh yeah, TikTok.
You're about 38, are you not?
I'm 38, yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
only joking. I know it's a tool for, I get it.
it's a
Sorry.
tool, yeah. Um, and then you can get me on my website as well. It's kieranmcnally.net.
Excellent. And I will keep people informed as best I can about the book as well. Like, and we'll
Thanks.
you can let me know, and I'll mention it on the podcast or whatever. Obviously I can share this on the social media stuff. Um, Kieran, if you don't mind sticking around for a minute, I'll just close this out.
Perfect. Yeah.
You've been a tremendous guest.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I'm looking for these adjectives. I can't keep saying great, so I'm kind of running through the
Tremendous.
adjectives.
I'm delighted you used tremendous on me anyway.
You might have been the first tremendous, to be honest. So fair play to you. I also want to say thanks to John Francis as always for the tech. I always thank my mum, my dad, my granddad, Jordan Calvin. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you would. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, and X. I always say that with such disdain for no reason. I don't even use it. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Anchor, Google Podcasts, all the other podcasts. Most importantly, thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in today. Go check out Kieran and buy the book when it comes out. You'll all benefit from it, basically, is what we're saying. Kieran, once again, thank you very much.
Cheers, Eric. Thanks.
And everyone else, we'll be back next week.